Sometimes you see the person now, but you have no idea what they processed through to get to where they are now. And so now that I know this about him, I understand his passion and his drive and his enthusiasm to make sure that people who are hurting, people who are discounted out, people who have dealt with some of the things that he dealt with, his passion to make sure that not one child, not one person, not one man, not one woman be left behind or be discounted or get the help that they need. And so I was just so overwhelmed with this book that I was just like, wow. And then he said, well, can I use one of your quotes? I was like, sure. And to know that he has a passion to make sure that people who have dealt with what he is dealing with, especially African American males, because having two sons, I kind of understand now that they're grown men, why is such a need for them to be able to talk about what they need to talk about.
My name is Shalique Hansbrough, and I'm also a sorority member of Delta Sigma Theta, and so one of our areas of focus is physical and mental health awareness. And that's definitely something that we are faced with dealing with every day. And as Lisa said, trauma is different for everyone. Everyone experiences, you may have experienced similar things, but trauma is still different no matter what that similar issue might be. So I won't be before you long. I stood to introduce the two men that will be on the panel for this evening. And of course, you all know Dr. Bailey, and you know that you've seen the books that he's written. I'm not sure if you've read them. I have read most, but the last one is a hard read. It really is, because he's sharing so much of himself in that particular memoir. Dr. Bailey and I have known each other for many, many years when he was a professor at Millikin University, and we chronicled his time there, and as he's moved on to other universities, and he's a good friend of mine. We've attended church together, but we've also had opportunities to spend just some real quality time. And so I appreciate our friendship, I appreciate what you bring to the table, and I really appreciate you being able to share of yourself in this manner. So please, let's welcome Dr. Bailey.
We got a lot to talk about tonight, and as folks have said, there's potential to be some uncomfortable kind of talk about mental illness, seeking treatment, stigma, sexual abuse, sexual assault. And so we're going to have some candid conversations. We're going to talk about the book. It is a difficult read in the sense that you now know the face of the person who's gone through this. But I can tell you that it's a very good book. I can't kind of put it down. So if you haven't read it, I encourage you to get the book, buy the book, and read it. But in keeping with what our topic is in combating mental health, can you talk a little bit about the moment that you realized that you needed mental health treatment, that you needed to go and seek that treatment for issues that you were dealing with, and then we'll kind of get into how you got there.
Yeah. Well, there's some funny stories in the book, right? So I'm not going to disclose the stories, but one thing I will say is that I was specifically led to help with two different people. One was a colleague of mine who works at Fresno State University, who had been hearing me talk over the past, this was in 2013, hearing me talk over the past 5-6 years, and basically said, Julius, man, you know what, let me be honest with you, bro. You need help, right? I'm like, man, I don't need no help, you know, that kind of thing. I'm good. He's like, nah, bro, you need help, right? And the reason I start with him is because he now becomes literally the third person in about a period of about 6 months, including, quite frankly, a sex worker at a dance club who told me that I got a problem. And I'm looking at her like, no, you got the problem, I'm good, you know what I'm saying? But she said, no, you got a problem, you need help. And so when you add these things together, I backtrack my life. I tell a story about, some of you in the room have met my ex-wife. I tell a story about the fact that when my ex-wife and I broke up, and then I had another relationship when that broke up, both of them told me one thing. They both told me, you're going to die a lonely man. Not that they didn't love me, but they knew something was wrong with me, that I would be pushing them out. You're going to die a lonely man. And so for me, I had to ask myself, is this the kind of life that I want? I'm accomplished professionally, I had other things going on, but I was experiencing deep depression. I was engaged in activities that, probably were detrimental to my health, right? And so I think, also I just asked myself, do I want to live? And what type of quality of life do I want to live? And ultimately it said, I want real relationships. I want trusting relationships. I want to be able to love. I want to be able to trust. I want to be able to hope in love and hope in what love offers, right? But in that moment, I didn't. I was highly pessimistic. I was growingly despondent in terms of love, right? One person even told me in the book, Dr. Bailey, your love container is full. Not that it's full of love, it's just full that it won't let love in. Right? And so I'm realizing, what do you mean? You mean to tell me that I can't even get love in? I need some help. Because every relationship is based on love. Whether it's church relationships, work relationships, friend relationships, it's based on love. If I'm walking around the country speaking about uplift and growth, but yet I'm engaged in distrustful relationships, I'm not acting the way in which I need to act in public and private, I need help.
I mean, you've got word salad behind your name, you've worked at university, you've traveled the country, and now you're saying, oh, I need help still. So can you talk about just kind of that process for a second?
Well, I think there's two processes. One is that, what people think of me, and what do I think of myself, right? Because again, I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think that what we have to ask ourselves are people who haven't made that step that I made in 2014. You have to ask yourself, how much do I really love myself, right? I mean, we talk that love game, we talk that smile game, we put on our swag, we look good, we dress up. I argue we dress up for hurt. We put on the accoutrements of hurt, right? And I did that well. I hid behind my writing. I hid behind my speaking. I hid behind my teaching, hoping that they would get something that I felt that I would never get. Hoping that they would have something that I would never get. So for me, it was more so, do I love myself to step in the chair? And then who do I even turn to? Right? Luckily, I had a full-time job, so I had to go to HR. Can I get some help? Can y'all pay for it? So I had a little benefit in the sense that I had a full-time job, but then obviously, we all know people that don't have full-time jobs. We all know people who don't have the, who think they can't afford it, let alone the stigma right under the left. So my first question was, can I even afford it? Because I look at it this way. I got child support, I got travel I gotta do. I got too much money to spend. I can't be paying on doctor. I'm a PhD in philosophy. I studied all the psychologists. I can talk to you better than you can talk to me. You know what I'm saying? That's how I looked at it, right? And I literally went to 3 different doctors. I'll be honest with you, because I'm always honest here. The first doctor I went to, I wanted to find a pretty woman. Because again, I'm operating under a false sense of what health is. To me, health is the arms of a woman. Right. So if I can get to the arms of a woman who's in the guise of a doctor, even better. Where do I lay, ma'am? Where do I lay? Right? But she read me real quick. She said, brother, I ain't that kind of doctor player. I don't even know if that's legal in Ohio. You know what I'm saying? She said, you need serious help, and maybe I'm not the one to give it to you. So it took me a couple different people. So very specifically. I went to my students first. And we were reading a Russian literature book by Fyodor Dostoevsky called The Underground Man. And the book, in this book, he talks about he's an ugly man. He's a wretched man. hated himself, and he loved to disrespect others. And I was reading that book, and I'm like, I didn't feel ugly, but I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel despondent, but I didn't feel connected. And I said to myself, maybe I'm this underground man. Maybe my life, even though it's in public, the reality is most of my nights was alone. Most of my time was alone. And so I asked my students, I said, what do you think is me? Or in a religious sense, who do you say that I am? Right. Now that debate, oh, you got it going on. You this, you that, we see you on TV, you got your website. I'm like, y'all don't know me. Now I'm turning T.I. to rap. You may see me on the class, but you don't know me. You know that kind of thing, right? And as I realized, you don't know the pain that I've been through, do you? And so I started telling stories. That's one. Second, your institution. For 12 years, I've been going through the Illinois Department of Corrections talking to brothers. As you know, it's hard to get their trust in conversations, right? What I do is I open up with truth conversations. I walked in the door, I never forget, Reverend Carson, 2013, I walked into Graham Correctional Center. I said, today I am 32 days stripper free. And 150 inmates started clapping. And they thought I was joking, telling a joke. I'm like, no, I'm serious. I finally realized that what I thought that was creating masculinity was reducing me to nothingness. I said, I became a necrophiliac, loving dead folk and dead spirits, trying to elevate who I am on the backs of individuals who are trying to find themselves. So I realized real quickly that people don't know what I've been experiencing and what I'm trying to mask that with the accoutrements we talked about. So for me, it was what do you think about me? And then I said, if I told you, back to the beginning, if I'm telling you these stories, now what do you think about me? Man, I've been there. I've been there. I got a friend that's been there. I got a sister that's been there. I'm thinking, you mean to tell me that every time I'm thinking I'm sneaking at the club, or I'm sneaking as a boyfriend number 2, you mean, and okay, what you mean, you've done that before? Every time I've had silent nights that I wish I was connected, but then I didn't know if I loved enough to connect with somebody? You mean to tell me I'm not the only one feeling that? How can I get past that? The chair and mental therapy is good.
How powerful to know you're not alone. You know, to know that, okay, yeah, I've been there. Oh, you've been there, I've been, and all of a sudden it's normal to go seek help. It's normal to kind of say to folks, there's a problem, help me fix it. Look, I didn't know this happened. You know, can you talk a little bit about, as your friends and family, as they read the book, and I'm sure, you know, those discussions about, hey, I'm doing this, right. And so just let you know I'm doing this. What's been their response to you now?
The first time I cried was when my mama said to me, Jay, I read the first 7 pages and I can't read it. Mm-hmm. You're my son. I can't read this. Then, of course, you know, I got to have the legal conversations, ex-wife, got to have conversations with ex-girlfriends. Well, you know, I got to change some names. Jewish stories are real. But the question is not about you, ex-girlfriend in D.C. It's not about you. It's about me. So even when I'm hearing their stories, I want to tell you what's about to happen, but I want you to know this is my story. I'm not going to disrespect you. I love you. But this is my story. This is how I affect the situations. But then when I'm hearing back, Julius, I didn't know that. Well, you knew I was depressed. Well, I thought you'd get away with it. Why did I get away with it? Because our community says we get over it. Let's go to church. We were in church all the time. Y'all know. I'm still depressed. The book has been reviewed by a lot of people. One person who everybody in the room probably know is Iyanla Vanzant. And Iyanla Vanzant read the book before it was in its edited form. And she had this long thing to talk to me about. But the one thing she said to me was, Julius, you know my books. I haven't done what you've done in all my books for black men. So when Iyanla Vanzant writes, And then Lisa remembered. I sent Lisa that day her 5-page review of my book. And I told her we can't put all this on top of the book. You know what I'm saying? But the book says, Dr. Betty has done what is required for a black man to heal his mind, his heart, and his spirit. For me, it begins with this conversation right here. I was flummoxed, a loss for words. Rather than throwing the covers and joining this naked woman in my room, I pulled the sheets tighter around my body. I couldn't stand the thought of her seeing my body in the light, heaving out of the bed across the room. I always avoided looking at myself in the mirror until I was fully dressed or until I was fully comfortable with myself. But neither ever happened. I wrapped myself like a mummy in the top sheet. I shook my head at her and I went on the offensive. You don't have to bathe me, I said. I'm a grown man. I can bathe myself. Lord, go ahead, she said, raising her eyes to the ceiling. Help me endure this sarcastic man. Yes, Lord, he knows he's an arrogant man. He knows he looks at life as a transactional affair. He gives only to get. And of course, he gives less than he ought to give and receive less than he deserves. What he doesn't know, Lord, is how you love him so and how I love him so. He doesn't know that there is all this love around him, Lord. He doesn't know how to love himself. I get on the offensive. What you mean I don't know how to love myself? Of course I do. I know my own mind, don't I? I influence young minds, don't I? I'm well educated, don't I? I got a job and a profession and money, don't I? Well, come look at yourself in the mirror then, big man. Cut me off before I finished. She stood at the foot of the bed with her arms stretched out toward me, her palms open and waiting. Come on. Come on. And when I didn't release my grasp in the sheets, she took another step toward me. Come on. Show me how much you love yourself, Julius. Show me how much, show me that you know what kind of beautiful man you are, that you're not fooling anybody under that sheet. I know you're a fat man. You know you're a fat man. The Lord knows you're a fat man, but I know you're a good man. Do you know you're a good man? My blood pounded in my ears. I tore back the cover and stood nose to nose to you. How dare you? No, Julius, it is you that has to dare.
Typically, we see that a lot of the factors that you talked about, the dysfunctional family patterns, and by the time that people come in, one of the crucial factors is whether they've had that support or not. The stats say that over 80% of people never tell, and for each individual it is different, and we see people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, on up, maybe 50, where they finally come in, because it is a spiritual, mental, and emotional injury. And what exacerbates that is that when a person does come forward with that bravery to tell, it is the response that they receive from the person that was supposed to be there for them. It exponentially increases the amount of trauma and damage that they experience. So what happens is a person doesn't have a safe place or a safe person in order to disclose that to. When you think about black males and you're talking about the way that they learn about masculinity, you mentioned that earlier about sexual conquest. If that is normal, if it's normalized in the community, then it's very difficult for that male to be able to say that his mother, his sister, his aunt was the one that touched him, or a girl down the street. And so it's harder. Men experience some of the same outcomes as women, but they experience it differently because they have to talk about it differently, and they also think about it differently. And because our society only gives males permission to express one emotion, and what is that? Anger. So, and that's usually the way that it plays out in males, and they typically come forward when they have problems communicating with a loved one, or there's, problems of sexual dysfunction. And so when the pain gets too great, or enough people say that you need help, that's usually how they come forward. And again, it's providing a place for men to be able to express what they think, how they have experienced it. Because it's very different for each individual. It depends on who did this to you, the intensity of the abuse, of the relationship you had with the person. If it was a pastor, if it was a person in leadership. So this changes your view of God. This changes your view of this first man that was supposed to be in your life. And, you know, for women as well. And so, like, you have the black woman, the angry black woman stereotype. Well, you know, for a lot of us, there may be some truth in that. So when you're thinking about church hurt, when you're thinking about all of those different things, these places, many of these places have not been safe for people to come and report those in power or those who are related to them. Because a large majority of the people who committed are people you know.
And see, that safety, that's such a key word, right?
Yes.
So if I come forward and tell, am I safe to come forward and tell?
Yes.
If I come forward and tell, do I find safety and support from my family members?
Right.
Or do I get, don't talk about it, you know?
Yes.
You know, that happened, but you know, you're a man, and that's okay, because that's what men do, you know, instead of understanding that trauma and what impact that's going to have on the rest of your life. So I think, yeah, that's just such an important part when we talk about safety. Who's safe? Are we even safe to talk about it? Am I safe to seek help? Or kind of, as you said, particularly, you know, black men, do I have to go all the way around the block to get back to this situation? I can't really talk about the sexual abuse. Well, I can talk about that, you know, I can't communicate well with someone else, or I can talk about my crime, or I can talk about whatever. But I got to go all the way around the block to get back to, oh yeah, by the way, this might have happened to me, or yeah, this did happen to me, but you know, it's okay. That's, what a difficult conversation that is.
It is, and going towards a theory of socialization, they talk about that, they talk about the circle, and it refers to when a person enters into the world as, let's say, a template, a person, a spiritual being. And so all of the institutions, the people that have an impact on your very being is how we form ideas about what it means to be male, female, white, black, you know, whatever it is. So as a society, American society, we have a tendency to see sexual assault in terms of sex, and it's not. It is about power, manipulation, and control. And so when that plays out, everybody has a different way of talking about it. Now, if in your family, you couldn't even talk about these things, or if you couldn't say the word sex and you didn't teach your children the correct names for their body parts, all of those things have an impact. So you come to adulthood still having these same ideas and biases about what it means. So when we meet somebody in the emergency room who's just presented for a rape, so the doctor, the nurse, the other person, your family members that come along with you, we're all individuals. All those dynamics come into the room at the same time. So we are there to advocate for the person. So you may or you may not hear all kinds of things. And you may hear, what were you wearing? Why were you at that place? Why were you drinking? And so these are things that the individual themselves may have to grapple with at some point. But at that time, these things are not helpful. Not in the context of healing.
And creating safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then there's also the process of grooming. Because not everyone who has been molested will go on to molest others. But 9 times out of 10, when children have been sexually molested, they don't have a frame of reference for it when they're 4 and when they're 5. So they tell you something is wrong with their behavior. So if you hear things like, oh, you stop that, you nasty, or don't touch that, you know, these are things that we need to be paying attention to.
start writing my story and get it all out so that I can be healed. And I didn't mean to take over everything. But I had to get it out because I know if I didn't get it out, I was going to die. I was going to take my own life.
So there's a first, thank you for sharing that. Very, very powerful.
Thank you.
But there's a couple questions that I heard. How do I get access first? What do I do? Where do I go to do that? And I'm sure people will tell you about what's local, what's available. But I will touch on the education part because you need to educate yourself, and we all need to educate ourselves about what's out there, right? What do we really have access to? Because people will tell you, no, you don't have any access to this. I can't help you with that. That may not be the case, you know. So how do you go out and find the resources or find the education to know where to go for that resources? You talked about, you know, being able to access services in your agency without having insurance. There are a number of places for you to go to be able to access services without having insurance. Talk about sliding fee scales when you talk about going to see psychologists or social workers or whatever. But if you don't know that that stuff is available, if you don't know to ask those type of questions, then you don't know. And you're at the mercy of whatever anybody tells you. Nothing's wrong with you. Don't worry about it. You're in school. You've got this amazing GPA. You know, push on. That's not educating yourself. You know, educate yourself about the things that you have gone through, about your illnesses, about the supports that's out there. That stuff is key.
Yeah, no, I would echo that sentiment, Dr. Hinton. And I think a part of educating ourselves is understanding your trauma history, really understanding that and what that meant, what the impacts were, acknowledging the difference between holding people accountable and holding that as sort of a grudge where I cannot move forward in my life. I'm suspended at that age of 2 or at that age of 7. And it's difficult for me to make any forward progress because it was real and it happened. And so I think when we start with the process of validating ourselves first and then seeking out the support of those who then validate that or with us, and that might be a therapist, that might be a very close friend, whomever that may be, that's probably, I would say, that's probably one of the first steps to healing and not living in that shame. Brene Brown is huge with really talking about shame and kind of stepping out of shame. She talks about when shame is driving, you know, guilt is also associated there. And so there's a correlation there. Knowing the difference between, even if I was in the wrong with something, there's lots of kids I even work with who were abused and then they turn around and become the perpetrator. And so then what does that then look like? We talk about some of the generational cycles as well. And so things become cyclical. And so how do I then step in and break that cycle?
You talked about, I like to tell people, the pen is gift and a curse, right? It's power and it's assistance, right? And so, but it also can hurt, right? So, you know, as you write your story, and this book Behind the Door, the changes we go through, as you write this book and as you write your thesis, I just take it from a writer, you know, understand where you're writing it from. Are you writing it from a position of hurt? Are you writing it from a position of hurt, of hurting in the present? Or not, or it could be all that, right? But ask yourself, what am I trying to do with this? What do I want the reader to get from this, right? And so if you understand that clearly in your writing, and you have a good editor, if you need me to help you, I can help you. I'm an author of 5 books and bestseller. Anyway, sorry. There's books in the back.
See me afterwards, and I'll get you a couple of resources as well.
Would you mind, actually, would you kind of talk about co-occurring disorders and a little bit?
There's lots of co-occurring disorders. As far, I mean, certainly there's the issue of persons who may have a mental illness, or be suffering from trauma-induced issues, PTSD, and then they may use alcohol or other drugs to self-medicate. prescription medication. With Dr. Dana Ray and Amy Clevenger and the Heritage Crossings crew, you know, opiates, obviously, you probably hear about it all over. And a lot of people are getting to opiates because they have pain. Almost everybody has some kind of pain. For many of us, we've been told that the way often that we can get rid of our pain is by taking medication. Mm-hmm. And there was a belief, there was things that were told that taking certain types of pain medications, and it wasn't normal to have pain. We shouldn't have pain. The physicians could help with helping us to eliminate pain for whatever the reason, whether that was physical pain or other kind of pain. And often in trauma, with all kinds of issues, when you are not dealing with it on an emotional, spiritual level, it comes out in your body. Mm-hmm. Physically feel pain. Yeah. And so for a lot of individuals, it may not be that there's current physical conditions that you're aware of, but you've harbored that pain, that trauma in parts of your body. And as you age and as you go along, it manifests in very real physical ways. And you know, that's you know, the piece with the ACEs that helps then physicians and others that are treating people to realize that may be something that we have to look at.
Biofeedback.
There's biofeedbacks and all of those kinds of things. Things are extremely important. But medication can be very, very helpful.
And placebos, I'm looking at that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways and tools that we can use. So I think it's important to find out what those tools are. Support groups can be very helpful. I think it's important.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Oh, sorry. It's important, I think, as we were talking earlier about safety, relationships, and having somebody and knowing that whoever you're going to talk to, what are their intentions, how have they been trained, you know, are they trained in dealing with people who are dealing with trauma, what resources do they have, and you know, certainly, I mean, whether it's somebody professionally that you're going to, it's important that you do feel safe and that you can tell your story. And it may not be you can tell your story right away. We all have stories, so what is that? And it's okay if you don't click with the person that you're led to initially. You know, don't go down that road of it's me and I can't find help. I think it's important. It's just for whatever reason you don't click with that person. It's about you getting the help that you need. And so helping to continue to find that voice and find somebody or a group of people that may be able to help you.
Thank you very much.
You act up, I'm gonna get a switch, you're gonna get whooping. This is what goes on.
That's right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it's still not traumatizing to people. So I think you talked about signs and kind of how do you get help. You know, the signs you see every day. You see every day. It manifests in behavior, manifests in drug use, substance use. It manifests in decisions that we make. So, you know, how is someone in a relationship? Why do they keep choosing, you know, these folks that are clearly going to keep, you know, take them down a road that, you know, that's not healthy, that they don't want to go down? Or how do they treat themselves? You know, you view yourself as, you know, shameful, or worthless, or whatever. Those are the signs. Those are the signs that something's going on that really needs to be addressed. And then I think the next part of your question was, then what do we do, right? So you have to acknowledge that first those signs are in fact there. Acknowledge that, yeah, there is a problem, and then have the courage and strength to seek out treatment or help or resources to talk about it, and have the support to talk about it, right? So, you know, how many people got whoopings in their family, but never really talk about it, right? We can sit around, you know, the spades table, Midwest table, and start laughing about, oh, you remember that? But do we have the conversation about, oh, you know, I was really hurt, right? Bruised up. You know, you really went to that next level. We don't have that conversation, and we have to have that conversation to be able to call it what it is.
I think there's lots of signs and lots of things to look for. A couple of resources that I would suggest if you want to do some research. The National Alliance of Mentally Ill, so it's NAMI, NAMI.org is fabulous as far as the resources that are there. It's primarily for individuals and family members of persons with a mental illness, but there is a lot of information about the various types of mental illnesses and what kinds of things that someone may see, if they're a family member or a friend or even someone who experiencing signs and symptoms of wanting to know, may I have a mental illness. The National Mental Health Association of America is another great one. There are several other ones. There are some great trauma resources out there. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration has all kinds of resources related to trauma and all kinds of other things. So those are great resources. Kevin Graham from Millikin, counselor there, and certainly, suicide rates are on the rise. Suicide rates among youth are on the rise again. Suicide rates among middle-aged men. Suicide rates when you get to college students. Just heard of one the other day. It's making the news. Washington State University quarterback appears to have maybe committed suicide. Whether it's people who feel like they can't tell their story, they can't seek out services. So, I think it's crucial for people that are willing to share their stories, tell their stories, to help to normalize the fact that it's probably more likely that people have lots of things that have gone in their families. If 1 in 4 individuals have a serious mental illness, 1 in 5 individuals, I think, there's some sort of sexual abuse kinds of stuff, maybe more frequently than that. You've got all kinds of issues there, and so the likelihood that somebody has experienced a mental illness or substance use disorders, physical abuse, sexual abuse, all of the various traumas is extremely high, and it may be even higher. Those are just some individuals that.
You talked about therapy, you talked about reaching out for help. Everybody's talked about that. But culturally, that's not something that some people will do. Whatever happens, we're going to deal with it in home, or we're going to keep it a secret. So how do we get past keeping it a secret? We talk about demystifying, because we keep it. Our culture says we don't tell anybody what happened here. Right. It was bad. Sometimes we'll try to take care of it. Other times we'll just try to just smooth it over. I see it every day in homes where it has been, we'll just sweep that under the rug. Women that have had children by their fathers, brothers, uncles, you name it. And they just keep on going, and prison has been their mode of survival.
A part of, I think, what we have to assess is, but is that working?
Right.
Because the issue is it's not. And so when we don't dispel cultural norms, when we say, okay, I understand that culturally this is what I was taught, but I'm going to have to step outside of this and do something else, because though this is an important resource, it may not be the only resource. And so to be open to other things, meaning I'm opening my options, essentially. So I'm saying that I'm not going to only, I'm going to take action. I'm not just going to pray about it. I'm going to pray about it and I'm going to do something about it. So, a part of that is we have to cognitively restructure sort of ourselves and be open to doing something different to get different results. Is what I think.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey, for your courage in writing this book and just sharing your personal story and wanting to help others to be able to tell their story and to come forth. So for opening the door and for showing yourself in the mirror and allowing others to take that step to do that as well. I thank you. Just a couple of things. There's lots of resources out there. I don't know who's going to be the clearinghouse. Lisa and Shaleep, I'll send you guys some stuff, and then maybe we can find a website or something to direct folks to on this whole kind of topic, so that if people want some information. There's lots of phone numbers out there. You've heard the one for sexual assault. For younger people, I would encourage the crisis text line. It's 741-741, and anybody can text. They are fabulous. They're keeping lots of data. They also have algorithms, so that if somebody says certain kinds of words that would lead them to believe that person may be dangerous right now, it will expedite their call and be taken care of. It's, again, text. There is a phone number as well that text. And then they make connections with local folks when needed for individuals that may be having difficulty. And for, I think, a lot of younger adults and for people who may not know and may not trust. The internet and social media and things like the crisis text line, you don't have to talk to somebody. They don't necessarily have to show who they are, but they can also then open up and get some good help. And I think that's the other piece. There's lots of information out there, making sure it's reliable information that you're getting, so that you don't end up re-traumatized.
Ladies and gentlemen, Diana Knaabe, the state director.
Get involved, we need volunteers. There are other places you can volunteer. Talk to the people in your companies, in your families, spread the information. If you don't need it, put it in your lobbies. Consider allowing us to come in and do professional training to build that awareness with your staff and teach people about sexual assault. It starts with awareness. And, one family at a time. I mean, it's possible to break the chain in families so that it can, stop going cycle after cycle, and also shattering myths about what it is and what it isn't.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sharon Walker, thank her.
Just wanted to thank you again, Dr. Bailey. Just sort of appreciate your transparency in order to really open the door and help others. We appreciate that. At Crossing, we appreciate having a seat at the table in order to sort of inform about the resources that we have, but then also how we can continue to improve services for patients. Hopefully this is just the start. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Charmaine and Robertson. Getting across, I'm still looking at the resource back there. I'm getting it. And my brother right here, I thank him. He drove all the way. I don't know if everybody here know where Volo, Illinois is. I don't even think it's on a map, but I had to mail him something, and the mailbox told me this don't even exist. But somehow I got to him. But I'm just thankful for this hard-working brother for many years working on behalf of the Department of Corrections in various capacities. But certainly for what you do now as State Director of the Department of Corrections and dealing with the numbers of our young black and brown and women and men who are engaged in so much. And so I thank you. Anything you want to say to us to close, we just thank you for being here.
Well, I just want to thank you to allow me to be a part of this discussion. For all of you all to come here. I can't stress enough, it really is a good book. I can't put it down, it really is a good book.
I paid him to say that.
No, it really is a good book. And as we, talk about mental health and stigma, here's the example of what happens if you get help. Here's the example of what happens when you confess that something is going wrong and can go through that healing process. So when we talk about not talking about it in our family, or we don't want to, we don't want to draw attention to it. If you go through that hard work, you come out on the other side and you're positive and productive. So I just want to say thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Melvin.